Last topic for tonight in the NBA, offseason really active already. It's exciting. I think these are fun times in terms of the NBA growing its popularity in the country because we have so much news, people paying attention to the NBA in the offseason. Really big move today. Phil Jackson put in his resignation with the Knicks.
Yeah.
What precipitated that?
That's one of those where it's interesting, right? Because it's not often that you get management moves about coaches or general managers or owners even that make that much of a big impact. But we've so far have had two. First one being the Cleveland Cavaliers general manager resigning, and following into that, Phil Jackson decided that he needed to part ways with James Dolan of the New York Knicks. From what the media outlets have expressed, it seems like basically it came down to a major disagreement in one of the biggest talking points in Phil Jackson's career as a managerial role in New York, is that he has always wanted to get rid of Carmelo Anthony. From the get-go, that was one of the first moves. He said, if I want this team to succeed, this player needs to go. We can't have him around. And management from the Knicks organization has been consistently opposed to doing so. And heading into this summer, where there's certainly a good amount of players to be had, a good amount of players that could potentially be acquired should a buyout of Carmelo be exercised and completed, this seems to have been possibly the last straw for Phil Jackson. And as a result, he has decided that he will part ways with the Knicks organization.
Which really says a lot in terms of a guy who has been known as the Zen master with good reason. He was able to overcome, personalities with the Bulls. There were some strong personalities throughout the years that he coached the Bulls. Was able to mesh those people together, figure out ways to create harmony, if you will, in that locker room, which doesn't seem like it. It sounds like a stretch as we look back on 6 championships, but there was real, power struggles in those locker rooms. There
Absolutely.
were real butting of heads and people, wanting to take control, superstars, people with strong personalities. I mean, we know Steve Kerr is a leader. He leads, a team right now, a championship team. But at one time he was a fiery two-guard and got into a fist fight with Michael Jordan. Maybe not so much was on the receiving of the fist fight, but, he also had Scottie Pippen, who was a strong personality at the time. Dennis Rodman, obviously, a strong personality.
And even he got the Lakers teams to have Shaq and Kobe mesh for 3 championships before
That's right.
that team ended up disbanding.
That's right. And was able to really get the most out of those guys. So to get to this point where he's basically saying, I can do no more.
Yeah.
Over one player, one piece. It really says a lot.
See, the thing about it, and that's the part that kind of is very telling about how everything went down, is that it's in some cases you could say it's all about the one player. I was not able to, ship out of the team. But it's also a lot about the reluctance of James Dolan as an owner. Because we're looking at a guy who basically got control of the team once his father moved on. When he gained control of it, we're looking at the late part of the 90s teams, like the Patrick Ewing era was basically all but over. We're looking at, he had key players at the time like Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, who were trying to lead a new crop of Knicks into the glory days that frankly they hadn't seen since the 1970s. And then ever since then, if it isn't for the existence of the Clippers, the Knicks have been the punchline of many an NBA joke since then. People and every single year you would hear about this one new move that could potentially bring him back into the spotlight. When they traded for Stephon Marbury, when they signed Mike D'Antoni to coach, when they signed Carmelo Anthony, or they signed Phil Jackson, all of these moves that were so staggered and were chained up with other not great moves on the free agency market, that you ended up with Knicks teams that were not only constantly out of the playoff picture, but they also were not generating enough flexibility for themselves in terms of cap transactions, because they just ended up handing out all these mammoth contracts, all of them end up being very expensive, and then suddenly you can do very, very little every single summer to try to help your team out, except for maybe the draft. And even in that case, the draft hasn't really gone well, because outside of Porzingis, how many players have they really drafted that have made an impact for the Knicks?
Right, and that's where, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's more than just the one player. Phil Jackson wants to see, success, and it doesn't look like it's anywhere on the horizon. They did strike it rich with Porzingis in the draft, but then you have to make a decision as an organization. Are you going to truly build around this guy and do it with a commitment and conviction right now? Or are you going to trade him and get 4 or 5 pieces so that you can start the rebuilding process without him? And that, either one of those processes is going to be painful because you have to do some big things. The more painful thing now, I think, would be to trade Porzingis, but it just seems that Phil has no tolerance for any of that. And I'm wondering, what do you think, just opinion-wise? Does he take a break and come back to the NBA in some way, or is this kind of his last thing?
So, I don't know, because I feel that Phil Jackson, he's very careful about what situations he steps into. You could argue that New York was kind of a misstep, but that can be forgiven, right? Because Phil Jackson was drafted as a New York Knick. He saw his first success in the NBA as a player for the New York Knicks. So you always knew that in his heart, he really did want to put New York Knicks basketball as another synonym for success.
Right.
It didn't really matter. Like, his legacy as a coach is already done.
Yes.
I mean, he's one of the best coaches to have coached in the game. His methods worked, and it got him enough championship rings, But
aside from harmonizing people, he had the offense, the triangle offense.
Exactly.
He really, revolutionized offense during that era. So yeah, he's solid there. Now it's from the front office standpoint.
So legacy, I don't think legacy-wise he's really that much affected by if his front office work ethic or moves or transactions really panned out. If he steps into a situation that seems good for him, he'll go into it. It will be very interesting to see, for example, right now the Lakers have hired a very green general manager, because backing up Magic Johnson as his general manager, I believe, is Kobe Bryant's former agent, who basically has been an agent for all of his career and only now is stepping into that role. Should he fail to produce any results in that front, I could easily see Jeannie Buss and Magic Johnson attempting to convince Phil Jackson to come back in a general manager role for the Lakers. That could be a thing that could happen, but again, that's something that would be years down the road, and even by then, Phil Jackson himself might make it so that he might not want to do that in the first place.
I can see Phil Jackson sitting on the side of the banks of a nice wide river, fly fishing, and enjoying his time right now.
Absolutely.
If the right opportunity comes up in a short period of time, maybe he could be enticed, but I think the longer that time goes on, the less chance he comes back.
More importantly, who do the Knicks fill that role that Phil Jackson left with? Because you'll still need someone to assume the head of president of basketball operations. Your general manager can only carry the team for so long. And in that sense, I was talking with some friends of mine earlier today, and one of them offered a very, very bold prediction, which I kind of enjoy, and as such, I find it very funny should it happen, and that is, are the Knicks willing to trust the process? Because right now, Sam Hinkie, the guy that is responsible for what has happened in Philly over the last couple of years, is looking for a job. He could easily go to New York, and maybe New York might buy into trusting the process.
Well, let's see if that ends up coming to fruition. It sounds like a really interesting, a little bit off the wall prediction, but Philly to New York doesn't sound too crazy when you think about it that way. And the mess that New York is in could just be looking for a guy like Hankins. So with that, we're going to leave it to you to keep talking sports. Let us know in the comments section or in replies to Twitter what you want us to talk about next time. Until next time, Butchered Sports Talk, Frank and Jorge. Have a good one.